Check, check, 1, 2. Getting started a little early since this is my first stream. Uh, Waiting on my wife to verify that my mic is working. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so bear with me. There's like a 5 to 10 second delay on this stuff. But yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. This is the first stream talking about my event, The Shadow of Corruption. And it's just a general overview of the event, talking a little bit in detail about some of the other things that you might have seen in like the trailer that I put together. By the way, I had a ton of fun with that, and I was up way late a bunch of nights making noise. I'm sure my wife heard me banging around on stuff. But yeah, so we'll be covering the premise of it, the venue, the dates, the cost, which is something that I couldn't list on the Facebook event for whatever reason, because when you make it a in-person event, it doesn't allow that. What role play and full-time immersion means in context of like an Amped Guard event. Some challenges that I think potentially face the event in ways that I'm planning on overcoming those. And then the idea of what like a minimum viable product for this event is. Okay, so first up, the premise of this thing. So in that trailer, you saw a bunch of cultists going through things. If you picked up on that, they all have a bunch of different masks, and there's, one old wrinkly faced dude at the end who's up to no good. But the idea is the Kingdom of Polaris is going to be getting together for a harvest banquet after having to deal with a plague that has stricken the land for the past year. Wonder what that is. So during this banquet, something happens and the entire celebration goes downhill. Everything gets crazy, chaotic, and it's up to all of the adventurers to try and figure it out and beat down all of the big bads. Yeah, so general overview premise of why why we're going to be hanging out and having Amped Guard. So next up is going to be the venue, and let me switch over to a different scene. There we go. Okay, so with this venue, it's at Parker Scout Reservation. This place is enormous, and we have access to the entirety of it. And that includes the biggest reason that I reserved this site, which is this fancy castle right there. So that's where all of the adventurers and everybody is going to be hanging out for most of the time. Looking around the site, there are a bunch of buildings down here that are all part of the scout camp. I'm going to decline accessing the insides of, this is like the dining hall. They have some chapels and stuff like that. But this is a pavilion. There's a huge park over here as well. There are a couple other fancy sites. They have like an archery range, a gun range, and then this big fire pit right over here, which we are absolutely going to utilize. So yeah, it is a pretty fancy site. Go through some other pictures talking about this site. So there is a nice, beautiful aerial view of the castle, where, again, this is like the home base, if you will, for the adventurers. This is where they all come for the banquet, and this is where we are going to be dispatching adventurers out on their missions. Nice picture of the fancy front gate. Now, this picture showcases the fact that inside of these walls, you notice there's a balcony that wraps and it goes around the entire thing. And there are two staircases, one on either side, so people can get up on that balcony and have fun shooting arrows through that. Here's a nice picture of the Great Hall. And you can see some of the kitchen in the background, which I think is coming up on the next picture. There you go. Big fancy industrial kitchen. Makes making food for Amtgarders easy, I hope. This is the best picture I could find of some of the bunks that they have. I'm pretty sure this is downstairs. They have two bunkhouses, one downstairs and one upstairs. More on that later. This is just a nice, pretty view of it showcasing, a bunch of the different sites and all kinds of stuff that they have there. So you can get a good idea of what we're going to be working with. Beautiful outside picture. And look at that, snow. Hopefully, with the dates that we have, we won't have to deal with snow, but it's not unheard of for them to get snow in October. So yeah, let's go back to this map and talk about where this is. The closest major city that I can think of is Brainerd, Minnesota. So that is where we're going to be at. Brainerd is somewhere right there. So yeah, it's pretty far away from a lot of the kingdom. However, hopefully you agree with me that there's not really much in the way of something from a site standpoint that can compete with something like that, because that is just fantastic. It's super cool. I've been here one time before for a different LARP, and I had a blast. The venue is fantastic, and that's what gave me this idea in the first place. Okay, next up, we're going to talk dates. So it starts October 1st, which is a Friday. At 8 p.m. is what time the adventurers will start arriving. If you sign up to be an NPC, I'm hoping around 5 o'clock. If you're an NPC, dinner is going to be provided for you as we go through, talk about the locations and stuff inside of this castle, how things are going to operate, etc. Get you more familiar with the systems. There's going to be another stream coming up talking specifically about the NPC aspects and what you can expect, how things are going to work. Excuse my cat if you happen to see him cross over. Otherwise, yeah, 8 p.m. for basically everybody else who is attending as a player character. Goes all Sunday is when all of the questing and adventuring is going to happen. And then Sunday around noon is when we hope to have everybody out. And then maybe around like 2 p.m. or so, if you sign up to be an NPC, I'm really hoping that you will stay and help clean up too. There's a pretty simple checklist that they sent me with all of the things they expect done to help clean up the castle and stuff like that. It'll be a blast and super quick if everybody pitches in and helps, no problem. So with those dates, I went and looked up some of the historical temperatures for that, just to give you an idea. So the highs are typically between 50 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and the lows are typically between 40 and 50 degrees. So there's like a 10-degree swing between day and night. The lowest it's been has been like 0 degrees. One time, one of those days, I think it was the 3rd, but that was uncharacteristic. There wasn't snowfall or anything on that day, which is surprising. I was expecting it to just get hammered with snow, and that's why it dropped in temperature, but it's not. Just randomly plummeted from 55 the day before down to 0. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but what this allows us is to wear all of your sweet garb, because cool garb oftentimes doesn't mix well with heat, because layers look really cool, armor is awesome, just all of that stuff together, and super hot Texas weather like Jamie doesn't work out too well most of the time. So the cost of it is going to be $40 for PCs, and one of the positives to COVID, I guess, is I had a whole year of not doing anything, not any vacations, Amtgard events, etc. A whole lot of like minimized expenses. Originally, this was not the plan, and I want to be very clear normally the event would not have been able to function with this from a budget standpoint, but I am going to use my own personal funds to supplement. So every NPC who volunteers and comes and participates, all of you get in for free. Yeah, so hopefully that'll start a trend of trying to push event costs and shift them around somehow, because I really do think that if you're volunteering and you're doing a good job of volunteering and you're helping out like that, your event cost should at least be minimized or reduced. Originally, my plan was to do $20 for NPCs, so it was still going to be half cost of attending as a PC. Um, I'd like to see, people who are attending the event just for fun or whatever. Personally, from my viewpoint, I think it would be better for Amtgard if they got charged slightly higher prices, because events are expensive. Like, this venue is super cheap, and I got it courtesy of having connections through Boy Scouts and stuff. And it was still a stretch from a budgetary standpoint. This is only 3 days, and it's $40, which I think is probably pushing it a little bit for some people as far as Amtgard event costs go. And it was still tight on the budget front, just with the outlay of all the expenses that I'm expecting, food budget and stuff like that. So I really do think that eventually Amtgard event prices will have to trend higher, which would suck. And also, if that ends up going higher for your volunteers and stuff, then I think that's very unfortunate and not super conducive to this whole idea of, paying your workers essentially to come and do stuff for you, help your event run smoothly. So I digress. Off my soapbox. Next, roleplay and full-time immersion. So what does that look like from an Amtgard perspective? Am I going to toss you out of the event? If you break character or something like that, you crack up at something that you think is funny, and it's like, oh, no, 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 no more of that. Out. No, not at all. Not nearly that strict. So some basic things that I think just really help with the roleplay aspect. Roleplay is largely visual in addition to the acting and stuff like that, and everybody has different comfort levels. But at the very least, I think if you show up with your best garb, your coolest looking stuff, your nicest weapons, etc., the look of the game will be elevated, and that will definitely lend to the RP environment. Next up is going to be, hey, look at the site. It's fantastic. Definitely lends itself to role-playing. One of the other things that I think you can do easily as a player, regardless of your comfort level, is try to treat the world as real. Now, what do I mean by that? So, if a group of adventurers is out and they are there to track down a messenger or something like that from this cult that is presumably going to be in attendance as well, and they're not being sneaky enough, they're clanking around in their armor and stuff, coming up on this dude. They see the messenger turns around and sees them. In real life, if it's just one person, I think that one person would turn and run. I would. So the NPCs are going to have the free reign to do that. So you're going to have to be a little more crafty with how you approach situations, and you're going to have to treat them more realistically than there's, out of bounds and stuff like that, like we typically see in a lot of our battle games. So that too, and having to get in that mindset of thinking, how would I actually accomplish this task successfully, is going to help, again, drive that whole roleplay aspect of it. Which brings me into the next thing, which is think about how you or your character, if you're going to go for a completely separate persona, not necessarily tied to who you are as a person, think about how you would act in a given situation. If you're a healer and one of your character persona traits is your anti-violence or something like that, I don't imagine that your character would run up with a sword and backstab this messenger or something. Maybe you would try to encourage your party to use other means, like stunning them or something like that. Just something other than violence of, killing the person outright. So yeah. Now, some of the things that you are not required to have at all, and they're things that you don't need to have this, assumption that like, oh, I absolutely have to do this kind of stuff because this is a strict role play event or whatever. You are not expected to have, funny accents or something like that. Go for it if you really want to, if that's part of your persona that you're trying to, bring to life. More power to you. Awesome. Love it. But you're not expected to do that. You're also not expected to be serious 100% of the time. Funny stuff happens. People trip over things. Maybe, you lose an arrow, it bounces off a wall and accidentally cocks somebody, like, right in the junk or something like that. And it's like, oh, sorry. Like, say an accident happens. I absolutely don't expect anybody to just sit there and try to treat a real life accident as something that like you should role play around or whatever. No, drop what you're doing, go help that person, please stop the role play. So you're not expected to be serious 100% of the time or whatever. The whole point of this is to have fun, just in a little bit of a different fashion from typical Amped Guard events. And you're definitely not expected to know everything. So one of the ways that this game is going to function is guides take the adventurers out on their quests or whatever when they pick up a quest from their quest board, and the guide is going to also serve as a reeve for that adventure. So they're expected to maybe know more of the rules and stuff like that, or tell you how things interact, because it might not be 100%. Not everything that the cultists do is going to be 100% strictly by the rule book. They're going to have some unique mechanics and stuff like that, and the guide is there to help you figure that kind of stuff out. What are some ways that the game itself is going to help drive the roleplay aspect? We got lots of physical representations that are accurate about stuff. Like we've got candles, we've got summoning circles and teleportals, we've got garb that makes the cultists look very culty. If you notice, this is a whole little like new moon easy symbol that I have, and got it over some robes. So all of the NPCs are going to have access to easy garb and stuff like that. They're going to be costumes for any of the monsters and stuff. So that kind of stuff is going to be hopefully on point. Next up is going to be, there will be a lot of interesting characters for you to interact with, both enemy and friend. So when we're hanging out at the castle, you're going to have the opportunity of talking with, a healer. If you decide that you want to change classes and stuff like that, because you're free to do that. You don't have to come as a warrior and stay as a warrior. You will have to go to either the martial or the magic trainer and talk to them, and they will retrain you to become the new class that you want to be. So again, like more role play-y aspects than just like, oh, I'm going to take my sash off and put another sash on. And then, yeah, just a bunch of interactive systems like that. So there will be a couple of puzzle quests which are non-combat. There will be other versions of non-combat quests as well that will involve going outside. Whole lot of that kind of stuff. Okay, next up, gonna talk about some challenges that I think the event has facing it. So first off, there is a risk of event fatigue, simply because we have GAC in August. Then there's Keep on the Borderlands in September. By the time October rolls around, maybe people are all evented out, maybe nobody wants to come. So event attendance could be a little bit lower. As well, the site itself is pretty far from a lot of stuff. Again, I didn't want to make that concession and try to find a different location around this because I think it's just too cool. But that is absolutely a challenge that's going to make it inaccessible for some people, or just unrealistic, driving 10 hours or something like that may be just too much for some people. So that's going to be a challenge for getting some people. The weather will hopefully not be a challenge like I was talking. I think, 40s and 50s at night is a little chilly, but we're all going to be indoors in a castle that's heated and, a modern building essentially with all the modern amenities. But it could be too chilly for some people. Like I know Robert, one of my friends from New Mexico, was talking about, oh, is it going to be cold if I come to your event? And I was like, no, dude, it's going to be like 60 degrees. He's like, don't you lie to me, that's cold. So could be a consideration that will prevent some people from coming. Take a look at the chat. Hey Zen, yeah, you can definitely volunteer. There'll be more on that for the types of volunteer roles and stuff like that later on in one of the other streams when I go into a deep dive of what it's like attending as an NPC. But yeah, absolutely. I think one of the ways that this event will work best is if I have a balance roughly equal of NPCs and PCs. And so yeah, that flows into the next point, which is what does a minimum viable product for this look like? I think if I hit the goal of just 40 attendees, NPC or PC, regardless, I could run a phenomenal event that would still be an extremely unique experience and offer great memories for everybody. That will change the way event works a little bit. With only 40 people, we'll probably have, still some of the dedicated things, like we'll have dedicated guides, we will have a dedicated feastocrat, and we will have some of the dedicated NPCs that hang out in the castle itself just to make that function. Otherwise, I will probably retune the event to where everybody will have an opportunity to take a quest, and then if you've taken a quest and you successfully completed a quest, then you will volunteer to be NPCs for one of the other groups or something like that. Now, all of the garb and stuff like that for absolutely everything that the NPCs will need, I will provide except for just like a base layer of clothing. So feel free to, come in whatever minimalistic garb you want. While you are not doing NPC stuff dressed up in the garb or with the weapons and stuff that I provide, you'll be hanging out in the basement of the castle, which is huge, free to do whatever you want while you're down there. You don't have to be in garb, you don't have to be in character, absolutely nothing. You could, play Pokemon Go or something like that as far as I'm concerned until one of the guides comes down and hits you up. And then there are about 50 quests right now that progress through a couple of different storylines, and that will probably get trimmed to about 30 of like the bare essential quests, the big time story quest, as opposed to like some of the other quests, which are things for like, helping the healer restock their wares or something by going out and, collecting some healing herbs or something like that. So all of the go collect stuff for people will probably go away, and it will focus very hard on just the story so we can blast through that with the reduced number of players. So yeah. I think that about covers all of the stuff that I wanted to go over in this particular stream. So if you have any questions, yeah, Travis, feel free to come naked. I'm not liable if you get arrested or anything like that, but these robes cover up everything else once you get them on. So need a pimpocrat? If you're talking like somebody to hype this thing or do some more advertising, I'm reluctant to blast boards just because I feel like I don't want to, constantly push everybody else's post down and stuff like that. But absolutely, Sam, I would. I'm assuming that's Sam because it's Mr. McNichol. So yeah, I would absolutely welcome somebody if they want to help be a hype king or queen or whatever for the event, because I don't want to bother people too much. No, exactly not. Okay. Y'all got a minute for questions, and then I'm gonna call it quits 7 minutes early. This can be questions about anything, by the way, not relegated to just the general things. If you have questions about how certain things are going to function, if I can't get into it and cover it relatively quickly, I'll just say, hey, wait for that stream. But if it is something that you're curious about right now, the worst I can do is just tell you, hey, wait, or cover it, in a comment or something like that. So, yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, that's a good point. Travis, if you want to blast those boards, feel free to blast those boards. Oh, that's one other thing. I don't know if we'll encounter this issue, but it is another concern about the event, is we technically have free reign over this entire site. Like this, oh gosh, it's going to be impossible for me to find this now. Brainerd, Misawa, somewhere up here. Over the whole scout camp, wherever it is. But, yeah, oh well. We have free reign over the entire scout camp. That includes all of the camping sites and stuff like that. I would prefer if everybody gets to stay in the castle, and that means a flexible limit of 100 people total in attendance and a hard limit of 120 people total in event attendance. Like I said, based on how many people have said that they want to participate and stuff like that so far, I don't see us running into that issue. But if you start blasting it to boards and there are a ton of people that want to come, I will have to start. There's a way that I plan on handling that. Like essentially, it's going to be first come first serve. After I make an announcement and say, "Hey, email this email address," when that time comes, first come first serve based on that. Based on if I can get positive confirmation for everybody that sends an email or something like that. Some way of handling who gets to come as a player character or an NPC or something like that. Yeah. That is total numbers for the thing. So that would be 120 hard limit on people who can stay in the castle. If people want to entertain the idea of coming and staying, camping at some certain sites and stuff like that, I'm absolutely happy to coordinate with them. But like I said, from a perspective of the event coordinator who's trying to have this role play experience, I really think it would be cool if everybody could just hang out in the castle. There's a big great hall and stuff like that. It would change the mood drastically if everybody was all hanging out inside of the castle as we're trying to beat back this darkness wave. Ideal number of attendees, I would say between 80 and that maximum 120 would be my personal ideal. We could get through every quest that we have available. I think it would be super lively at all times inside of the keep and with people going out on their stuff. I think there'd be opportunities for these interactions of like, oh, one group is wandering out on an event and another group is coming back and they're down a couple of members or something like that. By the way, if you die, you have to go to the spirit healer inside of the keep to resurrect, and you won't be able to go back out to your group. So keep that in mind. If you have a healer with your group and they resurrect you on site, then you're good. But yeah, I think the high numbers would be really cool, just because more people, more hustle and bustle going on. Then, do I need any weapons or armor made? Ooh, potentially. Potentially have some sweet boss weapons or something like that I could hit you up about, and we could give away to successful parties, or maybe some of the NPC volunteers or something like that. Yeah, could potentially do something like that. Okay. Any final questions before I call this thing quits? All right. Thank you, everyone who came and watched the stream. If you have any friends or anything like that are interested in coming and they weren't able to make it, feel free to have them hit up this video and hop in the comments. They can ask a question there. I will happily reply to it and answer. So, yeah. Ooh, yeah. And this event has been in the better part of my mind for around 2.5 years at this point. I was planning on running it last year, and that obviously got shot. I had to cancel my reservation at the castle. So yeah, it's finally happening, and I'm super excited. And I have so much stuff made for it already, and I have a bunch more to make to make this thing awesome. So hopefully everybody enjoys it. Hi, peace.